It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Hello. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are you? This is going to be the fastest introduction you've ever heard because we are a full show today. Our guest today is Kris Hulbert. Kris is the founder and CEO of a company called Gratwick Productions, and you will hear all about the founding, the origins, and what they do in the interview. Before we get to Kris, we have our complete radio promotional package personnel featuring for the next 4 weeks. World 5 is the name of the band, and the track we will be featuring is called Be You. For more information on World 5, please check out our website, douglascolemanmusic.com, and click on the featured artist link. After the interview with Kris, we've got our Music Submit playlist, this week featuring Catherine King and her track Highway 420. Here is World 5 and Be You.
What's on your mind, weighing you down, heart pounding of the hellish kind? Bonded faith and love seem to separate. I don't understand. I'm from the outside looking in. In times like these, you need a friend. You will persevere. All that holds you back is fear. Be the one your soul shines through. Get yourself in gear. Wipe away those needed tears. Be the one your soul shines through. Be you. And they pass off your plight, pretending not to notice as they fly their kites. You fill this wretched void with burning rain. Don't know what else to do. You just have thought of the ways you can get back what's been taken from you. And carrying that spite, you'll never be free. Get yourself in gear. Wipe away those needed tears. Be the one your soul shines through. Create something new. That is what we're meant to do. Be the one your soul shines through. Be you.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
The Douglas Coleman Show is now offering a complete radio promotional package for music artists. Your track will air 28 times a week for 1 month over all of our online and terrestrial platforms, as well as permanently archive on Spreaker, iTunes and many other sites. Your profile will also be featured in our featured music artists page on our website. With this package, you will also get a 15-minute interview on our show to promote your latest single, EP, LP or upcoming gig. Similar packages like this can run hundreds of dollars and often are subscription-based. Our package is a one-time fee of just $49.99. Please go to douglascolemanmusic.com/CRPP. That's douglascolemanmusic.com/CRPP for complete details. Let's work together to get your music heard.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. See? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Wrong hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Kris Hulbert. Hi, Kris, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me, Douglas.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Let's see. You are a writer, director, producer. Got your own production company called Gratwick Productions. Why don't you tell us your background a little bit, and then I want to talk about Perfect House, which is your film, and also the story behind the premiere on Facebook, which I got here, but I don't want to give it away. So just give us your background first, and then we'll talk about that stuff.
Sure. Spent my 20s as a bill collector in Buffalo, where, unbeknownst to myself, I was actually making a living telling stories every single day while arguing with everybody on the phone. But it never occurred to me that Hollywood was a real place or a career opportunity until I finally got fed up with just the negativity and the toxicity of bill collections and arguing with America every single day, slammed the phone down, and 3 weeks later I was out in LA on my buddy's couch that I graduated high school with. And from there, I started writing scripts. I got exposed to the industry for the first time while working at Warner Brothers in the payment processing department. On my lunch breaks, I got to go walk around the back lot and see productions actually being made. And that's where the light really started to go off, that this was real and it was an opportunity that I could pursue. So I started writing scripts, started as a writer, because in my heart I was always a storyteller. But I didn't know who to give the scripts to. Who do you give that stuff to? How do you even know if it's any good if nobody reads it? So we started making them ourselves, and that's where the directing side of me came along. And I quickly realized that for me, directing was the other side of the coin to writing. And if I was going to write something, I wanted to direct it and vice versa. But in order to be able to do those things, I had to figure out how to get a movie made. So that kind of naturally evolved into producing. And that led us to getting the Perfect House made. And then from there, the back end was rather turbulent and kind of inspired the entrepreneur inside of me. And we've been building and building ever since.
Okay. Before we get to the film, though, I do want to ask you about bill collecting, since you did that.
Sure.
Well, now, what year was that you were doing that?
It was from about 99 to 2007 was my decade in bill collections. So I was there. I was on the collection floor when 9/11 hit and saw the drastic changes.
Oh, okay.
It's a very toxic industry.
Well, because I went through an experience of having, way too much debt and finally had to do bankruptcy. And this was back in the early 90s, so maybe about 10 years before you were on it. But these guys were the nastiest people in the world at that point. I mean, they were doing things. They were calling me at work every day. And they were doing things like sending messages to my neighbors who I didn't even know. I'd find notes stuck on my door from the neighbors, like saying, please tell these people to stop calling us. We don't know who you are. And I mean, just unbelievable. So
it's a completely toxic culture. And I've got a TV series written about it that people are like, well, you should do this as a reality show. And I'm like, listen, there's so much sex, drugs, and illegal activity going on these collection floors. There's no way you could do that as a reality show. The business would be shut down overnight. And during my 10 years, I saw a drastic change in it, because when I first started, now Buffalo has a huge subculture of collection agencies. When I first started in it, it was beat them up as much as you can. Say whatever you needed to say on the phone to get the check. People were talking people that it wasn't even their bill. They didn't even know the person, and they were scaring them into paying the bills. And what happened was, so many people were making so much money being degenerates and just calling and berating people, that they started using their bonus checks to buy their own portfolios of credit card debt and opening up their own quote-unquote collection agencies. So the laws and the bar kept dropping lower and lower, to where people were just calling out of their basements with a couple thousand accounts and all of that, doing whatever they wanted, following no rules. Then somebody came along that had the idea, who was a former collector that I worked with, of, well, if you pay somebody that just graduated law school to sit in the back room for a little while, you could say you're calling from a law office. So if I give Joe Smith $1,000 a month, now I can say I'm calling from Joe Smith's law office every single day, and it sounds a whole lot scarier than I'm calling from National Collectors Association or whatever the company's name would be.
Yeah, now the laws did change at some point. I know that some of that stuff can't go on anymore.
Yeah. They started bringing in the FDCPA rulings and all that stuff, and what ended up happening is it evolved into a game of cat and mouse. So there was people who were professional debtors who started using the internet, because we're talking about the rise of the internet around 2000, 2001 and all of that, and they started looking up the laws and everything. Then they started using the ability to record phone calls and all of that to try to bait the bill collectors into violating the FDCPA, and with that, the FDCPA started making the actual bill collectors liable for any of the things that they said or rules that they broke and stuff. So it was just... It was Russian roulette of, if you wanted to make any money, you had to break the rules. But there was people on the other side now. The billboards started going up all over. It became the new ambulance chasing, because every single collection agency has a discretionary fund to just pay off complaints. Whether the complaint's valid or not valid, it's cheaper to pay it off than it is to fight all of these things. So once the attorneys found out about these discretionary funds, you saw billboards popping up in the urban cities all over the place, getting harassed by bill collectors. Let's go after them. And it literally became the new ambulance chasing.
So what would you get? I mean, obviously you guys worked on commission, right?
Yeah.
So what would you, let's say somebody was in default on a $2,000 credit card.
So normally there's a settlement parameter. So if the bill is $2,000, normally you can go as low as 30% to settle that bill out. So $600 you could settle it out for. Anywhere in between there is what you could negotiate with. And yeah, exactly. So you're getting, let's say back then, and this is early 2000s, $15 an hour, which was big money in Buffalo. Still to this day, the average income is $30,000 an hour, or $30,000 a year, which comes out to about $15 an hour. Now, you'd get $15 an hour, plus you would get benefits and all of that, but you'd get commission. So an average number was $7,500 a month you had to hit. So as long as you hit $7,500, so if that bill collector on the $2,000 bill settles for $600, that's $600 of your $7,500 monthly goal. But in order to get a bonus, you had to achieve that whole $7,500. That's the break-even point for your seat. So if you don't hit the $7,500, then you go on notice. If 2 or 3 months in a row you're not hitting your goal, you're fired. So you've always got that hanging over your head. But once you get over the $7,500, now you start getting percentages on everything you collect after that. So an average to decent bill collector could be making an extra $1,000 to $2,500 a month simply on their bonus check on top of that. So somebody that knows what they're doing and is a good bill collector, you're making $40,000, $50,000 a year with little responsibility, little oversight. There's either collectors or there's managers. And most of the managers were telling you, go outside and smoke weed if you need to talk better. Go do some drugs if you're feeling nervous and anxious on the phone. It was that type of culture. And then with that, it was the type of culture where as long as you're hitting your numbers, you're a rock star. You can come and go as you please. You can make your own schedule. You can not do half as many phone calls as anyone else does. All they cared about was those numbers. So it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll if you're hitting your numbers.
And they didn't care what you said, what you did, who you threatened with what. Yeah.
And with that there's no regulations or licensing for being a bill collector. You don't have to pass any kind of certification or anything, and you've got access to people's credit reports, social security numbers, all of this sensitive information. I've seen collection floors where people are stealing checks from the debtor because some old lady sent in her check, but she accidentally ripped out a couple extra checks in her checkbook when she mailed it in and sent blank checks with it. I've seen people take people's credit reports and open up credit cards with it. I mean, you're talking, some of these collection floors have 100 to 300 people all sitting in cubicles who are 20-somethings that didn't want to get a responsible job. They're either going to college or they're flighting from a regular day job. And it's, again, a whole lot of hormones and money and lack of responsibility being flooded around. And it's equivalent to a dormitory, except we're beating up all of America in the process. And it rots you out from the inside. Like, there's only so many times you can call somebody and their answering machine has all these Bible verses about how to treat people and how to be good to people. And then the next day you call them up, and before you can say a word to them, they're berating you and swearing and using the most vile language possible. But praise the Lord on the answering machine. The hypocrisy of America just rotted my soul out, and I had to get away from it.
That's a great story. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's off topic, but
no worries.
I just wanted to hear about it because I experienced that firsthand, and It was a nightmare. And finally, I had enough, and I went to a lawyer, and I just said, "Let's just do it. Bankruptcy, kill all this." Yeah, the minute I did that, all the calls stopped. The minute I did it. Okay, let's talk about your film, The Perfect House. I'm going to read this off of your bio. It says, "The Perfect House became the first movie to premiere on Facebook after you refused to deal with marquee distributors who pressured you into selling out your family and friends who invested in your film for the sake of launching your own career." Okay, I want to hear about that story. What happened? So you made the film, The Perfect House, right?
So
go ahead.
When we started out making this film, it was just supposed to be the next evolution in our process of making things. Because we decided if we just make the next thing a little bit bigger than the one before it, eventually we'll get to where we want to go, making big movies. So the project before that was a no money shot in the streets of LA with a couple of buddies running around like jackasses. But The Perfect House was the first one where we actually had a little bit of money. We were going to spend money on it. We wanted to make it in a basement in LA and create a single location horror movie. But we found it extremely difficult to find a basement in LA. So we ultimately ended up going all the way back to Buffalo, to my hometown, to shoot it in the house that my grandfather had lived in for his entire life and that I had in mind when I wrote the script. So we went back to Buffalo. Friends and family all helped out to cover the budget. We got a couple name actors from the horror genre, and Felissa Rose and Jonathan Tiersten to be in the movie. Monique Parent was in it. One of the guys from Jackass was in the movie as well. So we had a lot of cool pieces all in place and all of that, but we wanted to make sure that it looked good because I've seen a lot of schlocky horror films over the years and all of that. So if I'm going to make a movie, I want it to at least look good on screen so we don't look like fools. So every dollar we could get our hands on, we put on screen. And that was the biggest mistake I made, was not preparing to be successful. Let's get the film made, and if it looks good, somebody in Hollywood will figure out how to make money off of it and how to take care of us and all that. Foolish first-time filmmaker mindset. Just make something good, the industry will take care of us. So ultimately, by the time the movie ended up getting finished and made, there was about $150,000 of people's money that had been invested in it. And this is $1,000 here, $5,000 there. We never had a full budget to work from. We just raised it as we went along. And we started realizing as we were editing it that it looked great. It looked really good. Everyone who looked at it thought we had spent $1 million budget on the film. We realized we had something on our hands and needed to get it to the industry. So we met a couple different producers and people, and one of them promised that they had a buddy that was that was friends. Their attorney was was friends with the vice president of Lionsgate, and they were going to get us $1 million advance for our movie and all this pie in the sky stuff that sounded way too good to be true. I didn't know A from B at that point in time, so you have to give them the opportunity to either fail or prove that they could do what they could do. Right. And the first thing that they did was want to put a bunch of money into the post-production to make it look like $1 million film, even more than it already did. So they went and told a bunch of their friends and family up in the San Francisco Bay Area that they had this film that they were a part of, and they just needed a bunch of money to put into the post-production, and it would be a 3-month turnaround time. They'd double their money or whatever. So they talked to a bunch of people that I was never allowed to meet, because prior to that I insisted that anyone that was investing in my movie I met and spoke with, so they understood even if the movie failed, you're investing in me. And if I go on to do successful things, but the movie didn't, I'm going to pay you back out of my own pocket. That's what we're trying to do here. So I didn't get to talk to any of these people. They conned people into investing from their 401ks, taking out loans. One lady was saving her a whole nest egg for her dream wedding that she was going to pay for herself. All these people were told to put this money in so they could come up with $100,000 to put into the post-production. So now the budget's up to $250,000, more money than I'd ever seen before in my life. And these guys turned out to be complete and total frauds. Their attorney had no contacts. There was nothing they could do for us. They couldn't even afford to send out screeners to companies and all distributors to try to sell the movie in a traditional way. Wow. And I'm learning all of this as we go along.
As you go along. So yeah, it's the hard way to learn it.
Yeah. They made a bunch of backdoor shady deals with the post-production companies that were doing our color correction and our special effects, promising they would bring them all of their future films, which they haven't made any of in the years that have followed since, in exchange for stalling me and delaying on finishing the film so they could continue to use our rough cut to go around town and introduce it as their own work to try to open bigger doors and close bigger deals for themselves so they could come all the way back around and hopefully double back and deliver on the empty promises they made to us. So ultimately, I found all of this out, had to get them removed from the project, and now we're sitting here with a film in our lap that has $250,000 owed on it, and we have no idea how to sell a movie. So all my research and education at that point had told me the number one thing is you have to separate yourself from every single movie that's out there. So at that point in time, Facebook was coming out with Spotify, music on Spotify. They had done the Dark Knight, where you pay $1, you could watch Batman on Facebook. And I realized that VOD and video on Facebook was the next ultimate evolution of where they were going. So my producing partner and I packed up a car and drove through the night and walked in the front door first thing in the morning of Facebook and said, hey, we want to be the first movie to premiere on Facebook and use that as our flag in the ground that we can promote and market the film around. And the secretary at the desk said, do you have an appointment? Took the packet and basically threw it in the garbage as soon as we turned around to walk out. But as we were walking to the car, somebody chased us down and said, hey, were you guys the ones just asking about video on demand on Facebook? Here's a phone number. Call this person. They used to be a Facebook developer. They're now building a VOD platform. So we called them up. It was a company called Flick Launch. The number went right to the CEO's cell phone. They were super excited to hear that we wanted to do something, that we were planning a grassroots tour around the country to promote the movie and all of that. And we made the deal in, I think it was April of 2011 for the film to release October 1st, 2011 as the first movie to ever premiere on Facebook. So from there, we got covered in Variety. There was an article writing about how Flick Launch is building a house on Facebook and yada, yada, yada. And here we are, first-time filmmakers, no lawyer, no rep, no producer's rep, nobody that had any experience in our camp making all of this happen, and we've got an article covered in Variety. So I'm expecting the phone to ring now. Hey, how did these nobodies get their film covered in Variety? We got to talk to these hustlers and hardworking people. Nobody called. About a month later, Grindstone, which was a subsidiary of Lionsgate, did in fact get in touch with us, and they sent me an email, and they're like, well, how much do you want for your film? Prior to that, I had been told that Lionsgate was going to give us $1 million advance deal, which sounded absurd. But now we had our Facebook deal. We had sequels written for the movie. We had a bus tour that we were planning to go around the country to promote all of these things. And this was still not too long after Universal came and picked up Paranormal Activity and blew it out of the water with the Demand It Now marketing campaign. So my response to them was, well, we've got all these great things going. We've got this distribution plan. We've got all this stuff talking. We're talking to people about a reality show following us around the country. We don't want to sell the franchise outright. We want you to work with us to legitimize our distribution plans. But if you want to buy the entire franchise outright, I've been told to ask for $1 million. But in truth, all I really would want is enough to pay back my family and friends so I can move forward without that debt hanging over my head, which at that point was $250,000. So the gentleman at Grindstone wrote back this berating email telling me how I'm a neophyte filmmaker. I have no clue how the industry works. Let me tell you how it works. You give us your film for free. We make a bunch of money off of it. All your friends and family can write it off because they knew it was a loss when they invested in you. And you'll go on to make a bunch of other films and be successful in your career. And I said, I don't know who you're used to dealing with, but I'm not them. I'll sell it out of the trunk of my car for the rest of my life before I sell out my friends and family and tell them they all just have to eat the loss on this. And they said, good luck with your Facebook release. Well, we're going to watch what happens and see how it goes. So over the summer of 2011, we did all of our efforts we could to try to plan a big, extravagant bus tour where we had a sleeper bus wrapped with the movie poster, drove around the country, did free pop-up screenings, and did all of this type of rolling reality show stuff to promote the movie. But unfortunately, we couldn't get enough sponsors to cover the costs of all of that because nobody wanted to go first. They're all like, well, you pay the deposit on the bus, and then we'll do the sponsorships and all of that, but we need the sponsors to pay the deposit on the bus because, again, every dollar we had to this point had gone on screen. We couldn't afford an entertainment attorney. We couldn't afford anything. So ultimately, to not look like liars and follow through on our commitment to do a bus tour and promote this film any way possible, the three of us that were left still pushing the ball forward, sold the last of our belongings, bought a 1972 RV that had been in a junkyard in San Diego for 20 years, hired a street graffiti artist to paint this thing up like the movie poster, and you could literally, it was so dry rotted, you could stick your finger through the walls, and anytime you hit a bump, it would rain pepper down because it was used for drug runs going back and forth to Tijuana to mask the smell. So this thing had no air conditioning, no radio, and got 5.5 miles a gallon. And on August 27th, 2011, my partner and I, one of the actors from the film, and our dog headed out into the unknown with a movie projector borrowed from one of our fans that we had never met. And we had $900 left in our name. We made it to Arizona before we ran out of gas money. And we just started doing pop-up screenings all along the southern border of the country, made it all the way down to Key West, went all the way up the East Coast, made it to Boston and Salem, and then ended up in Buffalo on September 30th for a countdown to midnight party for the release on Facebook. Just grassroots promotion, shaking hands all across the way. We met thousands of people. They'd watch the movie, throw us $20 for gas money to get us as far as we could to the next city. And the whole plan was wherever we broke down, that's where we were going to live out of the camper until the movie released on Facebook, at which point in time it would be $5 on through PayPal. $3.50 would automatically go back to us so we could reinvest that into ads on Facebook and ideally start it spreading slowly through social media. Everything worked great until midnight hit on September 30th, 2011, and that was the exact moment that Facebook switched over to the timeline format that they now use, and it created a bug in FlickLaunch's coding that didn't allow you to go from an HTTP browser to an HTTPS browser, so you could go to PayPal, make the payment, and come back and watch the movie. Thousands of people the opening weekend are trying to watch the movie, comment on the page, pay button's not working, we can't watch the movie. The FlickLaunch is sending us reports of all the attempted purchases and all of that, but none of them are going through, telling us it's human error on every single one of them. And we're like, there's clearly a problem here. But because they had developer browsers, they were always in the HTTPS window, and they couldn't see the button issue until 2 weeks later when one of the fathers of one of our fans is like, do you know if you just put the S in the HTTP, you put the S in there after it, the pay button works and it all goes through correctly? Unfortunately, by then, the whole thing was completely dead in the water. There was no more momentum from our tour and the promotions and all of that. And some of the sales trickled and all of that, but it wasn't what it would have been when it initially launched. And each purchase prompted people to share it on their Facebook page. And then when they finished watching the movie, it prompted them again to say, hey, what'd you think of the movie and all of that? So it could spread rapidly just by people watching the movie. And the whole thing was dead in the water. But the infrastructure, the idea, the grassroots element of it, the building our own infrastructure, the premise of it all worked correctly. We were just failed by the technology and being a little too far ahead of the curve. So from that moment forward is when we really started the path of building Gratwick Productions to be a parent company that could provide first ourselves with financing, marketing, and distribution using a lot of the models and emerging technologies that have been coming along over the years, but also for any other artists that were sick of being preyed upon, taken advantage of, and all these other things. So from that, I became a pariah in Hollywood for the following 7 years because we were trying to take on the establishment. We were being outspoken about all the things that everybody talks about now, the Me Too movement, Time's Up, all of this stuff. We were ostracized because we weren't willing to keep people's secrets. We weren't willing to turn the other cheek. I had a junior agent that was recruiting me for a little bit as a filmmaker and writer that came over our house on a Thanksgiving about 2 years ago, and we held a Misfits Thanksgiving for anyone that didn't go home and stayed in Los Angeles during Thanksgiving. We held an open house for it. He came over and turned it into a 6-hour brawl and debate because he wanted to argue with me about the fact I'm not willing to do the things I needed to do to get all of my films financed, which he claimed he could do. And what he required of me in order to have all my dreams fulfilled was that I had to be willing to throw my actors and specifically my actresses under the bus. If investors wanted to sleep with the actresses, we need to coerce them and manipulate them into making that happen. In other words, our productions would get shut down, or they would sue to pull their money out, and all these different threats of fear and intimidation that would fall upon everybody. And he even went as far as mocking out an entire talk-off of how we convince the actresses to sleep with the investors if they don't want to, by explaining that, well, the production's already going on. Do you want them to pull all of their money and all of these people, the gaffers, the PAs, everybody else that's working on this movie, do you want them all to lose their jobs because you wouldn't hang out with a rich person? And it was so off the cuff, like he had done it 1,000 times before. And again, we're talking about a kid that was 23, 24 years old and was a junior agent, hadn't even made it yet. And I looked at this dude, I'm like, I thought I could save his soul. I'm like, listen, man, we've got the talent, we've got the work ethic, and we've got the IP. We don't need to play those games to succeed. And he's like, no, you don't understand. That's how the game is played at that level. He's like, nobody's investing in the movies because they want to make the money. They know they're going to make their money one way or the other. They're making money, usually much bigger money, somewhere else. They're investing in movies for the experience. They're investing in movies because they want to buy the actresses, because they want this, that, the other thing. And now I don't officially know that this is the way it all works firsthand, but this is how it was all laid out to me by a quote-unquote gatekeeper of what I needed to do to proceed forward. And I simply was not willing, whether it was real or not, to play that kind of ball. And that's when we really got serious about incorporating and building this model, and really truly realized we needed to operate outside of the Hollywood model, so everyone else that just wanted to tell great stories and not be preyed upon had a home to go to that they could do those type of things.
Okay, so you're telling me that if I wanted to make a film, I don't have to sleep with you?
Absolutely not. I prefer
all right. Well, I feel so much better now. No, yeah. I mean, that is a very serious situation with that. And when you see people like Corey Feldman come out and see how he was preyed on, and Corey Haim, you know, when they were teenagers. And and you know that it was the same line. Well, if you ever want to work in this town again, if you ever want to be a famous star, you know, you're going to do what I say. Exactly. Yeah.
Because they hold all the access.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter how talented you are or how good your intellectual property is. If somebody else controls the financing, marketing, and distribution, they've got you by the balls. You need their acceptance and their approval to be able to do anything. And that's how they maintain their position and their power.
Right. You know what I thought was interesting was that you guys did what bands used to do back in the day before the internet. You know, when they wanted to launch an album, or after they launched an album, then they'd hit the road. Pack up the van and go play in little clubs across the country to promote the album. Well, the internet, for the most part, has done away with that because you can just do everything online. My question was, what did Facebook do to promote your movie? It was on their platform. Did they do anything?
That was the absurdity of the entire thing. Is Flick Launch was at that time a subsidiary of Facebook, And we expected them to promote their own platform, to promote that their platform was launching. This is their first movie on it. All of this stuff we expected. We promote our movie, you promote your platform. They both cross-promote each other. They completely and utterly hung us out to dry, to the point that we had a shouting match with the CEO of Flick Launch while we were in a parking lot outside of the Alamo Draft House in Texas when it was 109 degrees in the worst drought in Texas history. We're in a black RV with no air conditioning, and we had our dog with us. So as long as you're sweating your ass off in the RV with the dog, it's not animal abuse. But if you go into air conditioning and leave that dog in there, now you're a horrible person.
Animal. Yeah, I know. You guys?
I'm screaming. I'm like, dude, what the hell, man? You guys aren't promoting this. You're not promoting any of this stuff. And he's like, yeah, we really dropped the ball on that, and we apologize, and this and that. And then a week later, his partner calls me up. And the partner was, I'm sorry, not a week later. After the release failed, and they did nothing to promote it, and we found out what the problem was with the bug, we were trying to move our film off their platform to another platform. And the other owner calls me up, the guy behind the guy that was actually the money person that put the money up for this entire platform. He calls me up to try to talk me into keeping the film on their platform. And he's like, I apologize. We hung you guys out to dry. I didn't realize what was happening here and what we had an opportunity to do. We should have been using all of our contacts and connections to promote this all along the way. I didn't know that the CEO that was, I guess they were buddies. One put up the money and the other one did the work. And he didn't realize how bad his buddy had screwed the pooch on all of this. And Flick Launch went out of business less than 6 months later and never truly took off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what's on there now? Facebook Live is not exactly that. Facebook Live came out of that other app. What was it called? Periscope?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, okay. So that's not really the same thing. And then now you've got Netflix and Roku and all the others that do that. So Facebook is not in that business now, right?
I don't know if there is anywhere to actually purchase a movie on Facebook anymore. There was a couple different competing ones that had emerged at that period of time, and now you can upload video to Facebook natively, but you can't monetize that yet. So really where we've moved from is that Facebook was a good idea back in 2011, because our thinking at that point in time was, if we release each of our movies on Facebook along with everywhere else, that little by little, the audience is going to get used to coming directly to us to get the movie. So we don't have to wait for royalties anymore. When the sale is made, the money's deposited into our account. It creates a direct revenue stream for all of this. And then the big problem filmmakers have when they go into distribution is they have no leverage at the table. They have no pre-existing sales. They have no numbers to base anything on. Right. It's a complete blank slate, so the other side has all the access, power, and resources. They can offer whatever they want as a minimum guarantee or whatever, and you have no choice but to basically take that. You can't create a bidding war. You can't create any leverage. So all we really wanted from the Facebook release was for us to create a little leverage for ourselves. We didn't need to sell millions and millions of views of the film. We needed to sell a couple thousand views of the film to show that it was growing, that there was attention, that it was spreading, that we could potentially do it by ourselves, and that would have at least given us fair leverage at the negotiating table for the traditional distributors. It would have given us numbers to show to take it to a broader approach and ask them to come on as partners. That's all we were looking to do at that point in time. So by having each release on Facebook, it would get cheaper and cheaper to market those films because more and more people would already know that's where our films are being released from.
It sounds like Facebook really dropped the ball because had picked up, because they already had the distribution, if you will. There were billions of people on Facebook. So they could have taken Netflix or that model of Netflix, and they could have run with that.
Yeah.
And Zuckerberg could be richer than Bezos now. I mean, it just silly them.
Absolutely. But the unbelievable timing of that night being the exact moment, because they switched over at midnight.
Yeah, that was weird.
At midnight.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable the timing of how it all worked out. But the fallout from that inspired everything that's come after it. The 7 years that have followed, we've taken all of that, we've built from it, we've used the lessons learned, the trial and error, And we also had to wait for the technology to come around so that you'd have the opportunity to do equity crowdfunding, where anyone in America can invest as little as $100 in a startup and support it and be a part of it. Because if you're going to disrupt Hollywood, you're going to break up the cabal that they've got going on there. You're going to bring accountability to their predatory behaviors. You can't go to a bunch of rich people to invest in your company to do that. You can't go to venture capitalists to invest in your company to do that, because they're going to take control and ownership of it, and they're going to force you to conform to the way business is done in that industry. So to completely operate outside of it, we had to wait for the laws to change with the Jobs Act, where we could do a public offering, where we could do the equity offering, and anyone that wants to can invest $100 in the company, have ownership in it, have the ability to have influence over what gets made, who gets cast, what charities we give back along the way. Because the reality is, once you use the emerging technologies to offer direct distribution, the amount of fraud and waste that's eliminated from the process allows you to lower the price points for the consumers while increasing the return on investments to your investors and your shareholders. And that's everything that we've been putting in position here the last couple of years to be ready to launch in May.
I've had other indie filmmakers on, and I know that Hollywood is losing a lot of ground, similarly to music. And there's a lot of parallels between the two.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a music division, too, to help musicians as well.
Oh, great. Well, the one thing that the big people, still have power over, at least in music, and I suspect in film, is the distribution. Because when you look at the indie film stuff that is coming out, I mean, short of a Batman or a Star Wars or something like that, if you just take a romantic comedy, a horror film, they look as good as anything Universal would put out, just because of the technology, where you can buy a good camera for, I don't know, what, 20 grand? Gets you a hell of a video camera.
Yeah, way less than that now.
Yeah. And if you know what you're doing, you put together a film, you can't tell that it wasn't done at Universal. Absolutely not. If you got a good script, which is key for a nice story. So they still seem to have the edge on distribution. And I'm going with music because bands that I know that are starting up, indie bands and stuff, great music, great production, sounds as good as anybody else. The problem is they can't get their picture on the front page of iTunes.
Yes.
Sony Universal can. They can put anybody they want on the front page of iTunes. It's still the same thing with movies, right?
Here's the issue. iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, all of them are part of the complicity in the problem. Because here's why. If I want to distribute my film right now, I have to go through a sales agent. The sales agent, if I'm lucky, is going to take 10% right off of that. However, once they distribute it domestically in the VODs and all of that, you're looking at 30% that's taken right off the get-go from Amazon, iTunes, and all of these different places. That's what they take, is 30% off the top. They offer nothing for that 30%. They don't market your film. They don't place your film. If anything, they bury it under a list of higher quality content, studio stuff, name actors, all of these different things, and you're actually, by driving traffic to iTunes to buy your movie, at a huge risk of somebody getting distracted along the way and buying a more popular, more well-known movie. So you're being penalized 30% of your revenue and getting nothing in return for it. And this is where the direct distribution has to come from. If you want to be in all those platforms, you can do it without having to give up the extra 10%. You have to go through a company like Distributor. You pay a one-time flat fee, and it'll get you in all these VOD platforms. So at least you saved yourself 10% on that spectrum. But the end result is still the same. They're getting 30% of your movie and offering nothing but the technology to buy the movie there. And the technology exists everywhere right now. There's a blockchain company called Library, LBRY, that basically offers exactly what iTunes is with zero commissions. None. So if I have to drive my audience to buy my movie to iTunes either way and tell them where it is and spend marketing dollars to get them to go there, why would I not spend my marketing dollars and efforts driving them to a direct sales platform where I get 100% of the revenue streams instead of the 30% loss on that? And that's really the foundation of what we're building on the distribution side, is 100% pure revenue stream. Now, we'll take a 10% commission on that, but for that 10% commission, we're going to provide you your marketing. and we're going to put our money into the marketing, and we're going to let you decide how you want your marketing and all of those things to be done. So there's a huge gap between the percentages and the cuts that the industry is taking out and what is feasible by still providing value. And because they provide no value and exorbitant percentages, they're ripe to be undercut. And going to the little films that you were talking about, that's really the elephant in the room, is the studios, because they've had 100 years of building up their infrastructure, there is so much physical overhead, there is so many payrolls that are not directly attributed to the movie that need to be filled and need to be paid, that they have to make huge amounts of profit back on these films. That's why blockbusters are really the only mainstreams that are turning profit anymore.
Right.
Because all of these other films have such bloated budgets to cover all of those extra hands and pockets in the cookie jar that they can't possibly break even and make that money back, because the audience and the viewership is too fractured because there's so much content out there anymore. Everybody doesn't watch the same thing anymore. So because of that, you have to be smarter about your budget points. You have to be smarter about your positioning and your demographics that you're targeting and all of that. And if you do those things in an efficient manner where you're not just throwing money around because that's what you've done for 100 years, you can be very efficient about it, and you can turn profits that are marketable and manageable based on the budget that you spent. And that way, if you grow it properly, your budgets increase as your audience and your sales increase. And you just have to keep those things balanced. In other words, you're going to tip over from waste and greed.
Okay, so your production company's called Gratwick Productions. It started in 2016. I'm a little confused exactly what you do. Do you make films?
So I personally am a filmmaker, but I have my own company that's my creative content called Gratwick Films. What Gratwick Films needs more than anything is a studio partner that can provide it financing, marketing, and distribution. So we created a parent corporation in Gratwick Productions to serve as that entity, to serve as our Warner Brothers, for example, to serve as our Marvel Studios, for example. So myself as a filmmaker, I'll make a co-production deal with Gratwick Productions, and Gratwick Productions will provide me my financing. Gratwick Productions will provide me my marketing, but in providing my marketing, they're really providing the marketing team and the marketing dollars. I become my own CMO for the duration of my project. I'm my chief marketing officer, coming up and approving the marketing plans. I've got a whole team of people underneath me that have the marketing experience and knowledge that are presenting ideas, but I'm the driving force behind my marketing project. I call this the Kanye West generation of artists, where their responsibility to their creativity doesn't begin and end with production. They want to be involved with how it's packaged, how it's presented, and how it's sold to the audience. How many times has a trailer lied to you about what that movie is, and you walk away from the movie disappointed because you thought you were getting something else than what you bought for the trailer? Who ends up suffering from that? The filmmaker ends up suffering because the marketing team mispromoted the movie as something that it's not, just to get that initial first weekend of sales through the door. By the time anyone found out it's not what was being sold, it's too late.
On YouTube, they call it clickbait.
Exactly. Yeah. And the creator's the one that takes the hit for that, because it wasn't targeted to the right demographic. It was targeted to the widest demographic. Right. And so you're in control of your marketing and how it connects with your audience. And on the distribution side, everything is about streamlining the revenue process, because Hollywood math is what really makes everything a loss. I don't know how familiar you are with Spinal Tap, but 40 years later, and these guys are still trying to sue the industry because, according to Hollywood, Spinal Tap hasn't made any money. This is a movie that's been a cult famous movie for 40 years and cost pennies to make, but it hasn't turned a profit yet. It launched all these careers, but it hasn't turned a profit yet. And that's because they continue to account for deductions and expenses and all of these frivolous things that aren't even real, but they're put on the accounting books and the numbers, so everything continues to operate at a loss. And you know how you eliminate all of that fraud and waste and extra pockets in the cookie jar? Is blockchain and smart contracts specifically. They're coming, and it's going to completely disrupt Hollywood, and I hope that we're the first ones to start implementing it. So the royalties are the gravy train of Hollywood. You make a movie, you get royalties. You're a filmmaker, you're supposed to get royalties. You're a producer, you get royalties. You're an investor, you get royalties. But the problem is that entire chain of royalties and the waterfall and how it flows each person, each third-party entity between you and the direct revenue stream is skimming from it. They're trumping up their expenses and taking more than they're entitled to. Yeah. And then they pass it on to the next person. And they each do that down the line until barely anything's making it back to the investors because we're still at a loss. And now you've got to wait for quarterlies. When our movie first released, we got quarterlies regularly for about 2 quarters. Then after that, we didn't get a quarterly unless we called and requested our quarterly. Then even after we requested the quarterlies, we were told there wasn't any quarterlies. Then we started buying the movie a couple times ourselves just to see if there was transactions, because if nobody buys the movie, you don't get any quarterlies. But if I buy the movie 3 times and you're not sending me a quarterly report that shows at least 3 purchases, I already know for a fact there's some fraud going on here.
Well, sure.
So all those different levels between you and your money, you have to track down. You have to pay to account. You have to do all these different things to stay on top of it. Whereas smart contracts, once a smart contract is implemented and through a blockchain platform, if I buy your movie for $5, at that immediate point of sale, as many microtransactions as needed are executed, and everybody gets their appropriate royalty cut immediately, on the spot, without passing through anyone else's hands. So instantly, everybody has what they're owed with each single transaction. No more quarterlies, no more chasing anything down. It's all done by algorithms. And that's where I believe the entire industry is headed. They're going to go kicking and screaming because it's going to be an independent entity that builds from the ground up using all of this technology that's going to lead the way before they all begrudgingly have to conform and move to that model or die by the wayside because of how huge their expenses are.
Who is your customer? If I make a film, I want to get it out there, I come to you?
Our customer is on 2 sides of the coin. On the creative side, our customer is everyone below the line in the entertainment industry. The creators, the filmmakers, the cast and crew that are all working in predatory environments and conditions where they're being exploited. We want to welcome all of those people to a new way of doing business, where they're celebrated and promoted through the entire process. We plan on being totally transparent with the entire creative process in exchange for that funding. So auditions, they're going to be live streamed. How hard is it for a producer or a director or somebody else to run a casting couch when there's 1,000 micro investors watching the audition process and giving their feedback and commentary on it? Production sets are going to be live streamed. How hard is it to berate somebody or belittle and be a bully on set if the whole thing's live streamed? On the back end, giving back to the charities and things like that is another component to it. But we're embracing the whole transparent aspect of it to protect ourselves, to protect the people that we work with, to protect the people that work on our projects, and to provide a marketing tool that gives all of these people more attention and awareness as they're creating and doing these things. For a lot of actors, the beginning and ending of their career is the audition process. They're never picked, they're never chosen. But now, if there's an audience that's watching them, they can grow an audience just by being in auditions, by performing and doing good auditions that maybe they're not picked, but people connected with them, like them. They want to see them succeed at the next audition, so now they start following their career path. Those are what we want to do and provide for the actual people working in the industry. Not to mention the fact that prestige of working in the industry has been severely tarnished over the last few years. Harvey Weinstein, everybody else like that, has people thinking that Hollywood's full of predators, pedophiles, and scumbags. All of us that are just the blue-collar, hard-working people in the industry would like to be able to hold our heads up high again and say we work in Hollywood and not be ashamed by the people at the top of the food chain that make us all look bad. Then on the flip side, the other customer is the audience. The audience that's sick and tired of the same old crap coming out of Hollywood. They're sick and tired of all the entitlement and greed and opinionatedness that comes out of the established Hollywood, only to learn that all of these people are hypocrites. Now they have an opportunity to support something that's more authentic and true to the form of creativity and art. We're starting this in my local hometown of Buffalo in Western New York. So by investing in Gratwick, they have an opportunity to support local creators and filmmakers and musicians that we're going to reinvest in the community and grow it out from there. Eventually, we want to reach a national audience and reach where we're working with any type of creators that want to come and be treated fairly and ethically, but we're starting in our hometown where we can support the community, support the local artists, and use that as opportunities to demonstrate our business model so people can either join the team and help grow the business model, or they can take exactly what we've built and replicate it for themselves or for their community.
Give us your website so people can come and check it out.
GratwickProductions.com. Gratwick's a pretty excellent keyword, so if you use that, you're going to find all of our social media, you're going to find all of our past, and everything that we're working on and doing.
This is such a great idea, a great concept. And to think you guys came up with this in a grungy old RV going across the country. Kris, thank you so much. We got to wrap up this interview. Thank you so much
Douglas,
for coming
I appreciate the time, man. It's so grateful for it.
And please check out, once again, your website is?
GratwickProductions.com.
All right. Take care, Kris.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
All I see is bright blue sky. Then that song comes on the radio, and pretty soon I'm singing, driving east on the 420, feeling high. When you're lonely, don't forget me. Call me and say, come back and stay this time. Clear blue